Hi, my name is Stephanie Patton, and I'm a multimedia artist from Lafayette, Louisiana. I am thrilled to be in the Constructions Contemporary Fiber Show, and thank you for joining me on this little adventure. I do work with a lot of different, as you see, multimedia. Do a lot with mattress quilting. I've done a lot with vinyl, and I also enjoy photography and video and performance. So it depends on the project in terms of the actual materials or processes that I use. The mattress quilting, the first piece that I ever made with it, it was called Lifesaver, and it was in 2008, and it was actually the first time I used it, I covered these tractor inner tubes, and the whole piece was about. I started thinking what would convey this kind of message that I was thinking of, and actually the mattress quilting, it has so many different layers of meaning to me personally, and I'm sure to a lot of people. I mean, it can go in terms of birth, the history of it, birth, death, intimacy, rest, illness. There's so many connotations that we spend. A lot of us spend a lot of time on a mattress, and I was thinking of this one piece that was called Lifesaver. It made perfect sense for me to have the mattress quilting because it was about the issues of comfort, but also aging and death. And so there's so many different components to it. I just think it's a fascinating material, and I really do love working with it. The other thing I should mention, I have to say this, is that, believe it or not, my dad, he is a furniture salesman and sold mattresses my entire life. And so did his dad, who is my D daddy. And my great grandfather also sold mattresses and was part of a mattress factory. I think it was called National bedding or rose bedding. I could find out on that one. But anyway, so the mattress industry has been a big part of my life. And I really wasn't thinking of that whenever I first started using the mattress quilting. Go figure. Again, I think that the mattress quilting, be careful what you wish for. Initially, I mean, like a lot of artists, I'm thinking of how it pertains to myself, or I also think that and front I think the quilting has the statement, and the quilting has sort of universal aspect to it also. I was thinking of relationships a lot whenever I made that piece. Be careful what you wish for. I mean, you may end up getting the person that you wish for, and who knows great things, or maybe what you had not expected. Also, I think it could be what you wish for in life, just in general, the course that you choose. I think there's a lot of different interpretations of that piece. It was the first piece that I did that was actually on a literally like a bed frame. So that a lot of people were asking me about the frame of it, and I did have the frame fabricated by David Cano, a wonderful um, industrial designer type metal worker, and he did this for me. But the piece I made in my studio, and so I do like it, and I think that for what it means to me, and the material certainly. Every time I choose a word or phrase, it I do really try to have it make sense with the material, and I just think that a lot of the singular words a lot of times have multiple meanings that I use, like maybe please, like please, pleasing somebody, please don't go, please, please don't leave, join. There's just different words that I've used, and I think that the fabric makes sense. I've also done two other text phrases, and one was it will happen when you least expect it. That was the first one that I did. And then I did the one that you see here is be careful what you wish for. And most recently in 2022, I did the one thing you can count on is change. And I think that we are at a place in time where there's a lot of changing going on, and so that also makes sense to me. And I like the scale of it, and to have such big. I like to having phrases that have some kind of resonance to it, and I do think that the mattress quilting lends itself well to. I try to make it work with the pieces and the words, the phrases that I choose. A lot of the basic, I would say the sort of the overall umbrella of my work is a lot about mental health, physical health, emotional issues are a lot of what I'm dealing with in the work. And the vinyl pieces, like this one is called Gray Matter behind me. So a lot of involving the brain. And so it's gigantic. It's I think it's about 13 feet wide. And I like the some of the earliest work that I've done was preceding the mattress work was the vinyl. So I was really interested in it. It almost felt like these sort of protective devices. I thought sometimes about athletics or like a wrestling ring where you could bounce up against it and feel safe and be protected physically, but also emotionally. I also think that not to say that it's like a padded room, but it could lend itself to that also. At the time when I started doing a lot of the vinyl, the relief sculpture, I was really getting heavily involved in sewing and stuffing these things. And at the time, I was literally taking care of my grandmother a lot, or helping. She was getting a lot older, and I was seeing how it was a struggle to kind of walk through the house and these kinds of things. I didn't live with her, but I visited her and I was with her till the very end of her life. And it was a time when I also, we lose people that we cherish. And there was one year where I had like four major deaths in my and that was what started this with the vinyl. It was also the year that I made that lifesaver piece. So it was the time that I started using the quilting for the first time, and then the mattress quilting. So that kind of led into the text work and the scale changed and all this stuff. But I feel like they're similar. I like showing them together a lot of times, and I also like showing video with it. So it's a bunch of stuff. I would say the the vinyl work is a bit more abstract in my mind. And it's also padded and stuffed. So I kind of like this idea of comfort and safety, and also just this awareness maybe of yourself when you're next to it. Actually, for my BFA at the University of Louisiana at Lafayette. It was USL way back then. And then I went to the School of the Art Institute of Chicago for photography. And at the time, I was um, I was painting what you would consider traditional painting on a canvas, stretching canvas and all this stuff. But then I started going to a lot of thrift stores, and I started buying a lot of vintage dresses and purses and suitcases, typical art student stuff. I had a lot of fun with amazing teachers and fellow students. And I started painting on the suitcases, and I was taking as many photo classes as I was painting. So then I started bringing the photos onto the objects and painting on them. So they were sort of embedded on top of the objects. And that really I would say that when I think about it in retrospect, I think I was dealing with fiber a lot even then, and sculpture, but I didn't really know what it was. And then when I went to grad school, my MFA was in photography, but it was a lot of different materials. I was painting some, but then going back to my grandmother who inspired a lot of my work. I'm going to side pedal. She used to have these mail order catalogs by the side of her recliner way out in the country in Jeanerette, Louisiana, and I would just look at these things forever. And they had different things like the vocal modifier Dicky. They had oh, no, I made that one up. Sorry. They had different kinds of gadgets for elderly people to get like canned goods out of their cabinets and all these things. They're like, I remember one, the chafing shield, which was really funny. These weird little, it was something that people would wear under a dress or something so that their legs didn't run together. It was literally called the chafing shield. So there were different kinds of really funny things. And I was very inspired by all of these devices and things that I saw in these mail order catalogs, like Dr. Leonard's was one I remember, and it inspired a lot of my work when I went to the Art Institute, and I thought, what if I made these fantasy lingerie products? And that's so I made these things like the this thing called the vocal modifier Dicky, and it would you put this thing on it, it would give you a sense of assertiveness. It would control the tone of your voice. And then I had one called the heart filter that you would wear. It was like a strap on a device, but it had a little cartridge, and you could filter out like infidelity or sloth or different kinds of qualities that you did not want in a potential mate. And the whole time that that was happening, I was actually doing learning how to sew. So then I started sewing. I was using sewing a lot of elastic to make these devices, and also going back to photography because I was doing a lot of self portraiture wearing the device. So and all so I would wear the device, do the self portrait, and it was like a kind of a flashback to like Sears and Roebuck kind of catalog. So there were black and white photos, and I got into some graphic design, and I think that was also a really important part of my development as a young artist. And it's funny because they say that artists repeat themselves. Like maybe they have one or two good ideas or whatever their whole life. And I can see where there is some truth to that. And also the materials. I was like, I told a good friend of mine, Suzanne Frederick, I said, I don't know. They say that artists repeat themselves over and over again, or that with the materials or the concept. I said, but I don't know if I've done that. So back with the vinyl and stuff. She said, are you kidding me? I also had one called the Anxiety Guard, and I was sewing with white vinyl. And that was way back in graduate school. And then I did a little head cap, the Overnight Invigorator, which was vinyl. So I think it was something that I was actually not even really aware of at the time, years later, that this has been um, processed. The sewing, I certainly learned a lot, but also the materials that were kind of happening without me even really knowing. And it just changed and morphed, and it's been a lot of fun. Now I have an industrial sewing machine, and I've learned from some people, and I've taught myself through the years also, because it's kind of like wrestling and alligators. You figure it out as you go. The one other thing I would mention is that I forgot to mention my this character, Renella Rose Champagne, who I had a way back, going back to undergraduate school. I had a fake wedding with a friend of mine, Jack Revis, and it was an 8-month engagement. It was quite a collaborative effort. It was something that, art kids out there, art students, believe me that your work that you're doing right now is very, very important. Young kids, it is so important. You never know where it's going to take off. Anyway. The catalog layouts that I talked about, I did it as the trademark, the model Ranella Rose Champagne. So I've done different kinds of projects through the years, and I've also now have a radio show on KRVS 88.7 FM in Lafayette and Lake Charles, and it is called Lost in Love. And I host it as the character Ranella Rose Champagne. So there are multiple layers. Like I know a lot of Paul, you mentioned there are a lot of multimedia artists in this particular exhibit, and I appreciate and understand that, and I'm one of them. Absolutely. It is krvs.org. That's the link to it. There's also an app if you want to look up KRVS, the KRVS app. And the station is 88.7. It's part of the college here. It is part of the University of Louisiana at Lafayette. It's a public radio station. And anyway, it's a lot of fun. There are a lot of great shows on that station. So I hope you get to tune in. I think that I actually think it's very important. It's always, like they say, it's always great when you can see it in person. I think that for me, it is very important to have a sense of the body relationship to it, because I think the scale is also really important, for to have someone stand next to it. A lot of the pieces are fairly large, and I just I just think that it gives some kind of sort of physical, tactile feeling to be there in person with it. The other thing I think with the mattress work, I think that one of my first pieces, it was a much smaller piece. The first text piece I did, it was called Friends Forever, and I only made the it was a large, fairly large piece, but the depth of it was only about 3 or 4 inches. And I thought, well, what if I made it the depth of an actual mattress? So that changes it, and I think that just literally having a viewer being near the actual tactile qualities of the fabric, I think that it does make a difference a lot of times to see it in person. Of course, it's wonderful if anyone ever looks at it online or whatever, but if there's a chance to see it in person, I think it is important. I think that it also um, I love the idea of the viewer having some kind of physical the body relationship to it, because I think, you know, I have to be careful. Some people might want to sit on it or, or touch it, and people have touched it. And, we try not to do that, but it's okay. Like some of the vinyl in particular, I think it's got those kind of qualities to it. So I personally always love it. And I think it gives a sense of awareness to the viewer if they're able to actually stand and be with it in the, in the actual space. I think that one thing that's important to me in my work is humor, and I'm not always. I think humor can come from a lot of uh, like art does also. I think that humor is actually very serious, and it oftentimes comes from, painful moments in people's lives or whatever. And I think that, like art, it has a sense of healing. It helps people to deal with crazy situations. And I've always been drawn to comedy. I way back when I couldn't tell, if I wasn't sure if I was going to go in for theater or visual art. And in the sense, even though I went for visual art, it kind of the theater, the theatrical aspect of comedy sort of did come into play some in some of the work that I do. Some people would say, "What on earth? Nothing's funny about that." But then there are other things that I think that there's an undertone of it that even if it's people don't get it, I'm aware of it, and humor. Another thing that I did do. I lived in Brooklyn for 5 years after grad school, and one of the things that I did was I was fortunate. I was like, well, I need to take advantage of this city in New York and all that stuff. And I remember walking down one of the Manhattan streets, and I saw this little newspaper. Kids, there was a thing called paper newspapers. Newspapers on the side of the road, and it was for Gotham Writers Workshop, and it was a class on stand-up comedy writing. So I took one of those, and I actually took a stand-up comedy writing class. It was by far, stand-up comedy was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, but I learned a lot from it. So I was like, after we graduated, when we graduated from the class, we had to get on stage and do our stand-up comedy performance. And so that was quite an experience. And then I took some classes, and we did get some other like free invites to do our little performances at other places there. But whatever. After that, I took some classes at the Upright Citizens Brigade for comedy improv. That was very, very challenging and very hard too. I have such high respect for all performance artists out there. They really work. And it is such a not an easy thing, not an easy thing. And then that kind of led to remember, I did some performance as Renella Rose Champagne. So when I moved back to Louis, and I took some vocal classes, so I was interested in singing and music too. So all those things kind of overlapped, and I started writing some funny, what I thought were funny country songs. My first album was Renella Rose Champagne Homespun Hits. So I had songs like "Sorry I Didn't Get a Boob Job." That was one of them. I don't know if we can have that in. Mind Games. It was darkly humorous country songs, and I did a few performances, learning some music, and I learned how to play the guitar a little bit. But then and I did some videos as Ranella. But then when I moved back to Louisiana, I kind of took all that comedy baggage with me, and I met this wonderful collaborator, Walter Pierce, who goes by the name of Edison Fig. And I was like, I was kind of like, I want to do something, but I don't know what it is. So we ended up starting to do musical performances, and I was Ranella Rose Champagne, and he was Edison Fig, and I learned a lot from that too. So I think the performance and the comedy is actually a really big part of what I do. I think that as an artist, I'm cyclical, like I work in cycles. And so I do see, I always like to do some video work if I have a chance to do it, and includes video in any kind of installation, with whether it's a lot of the I've been doing a lot of the mattress text pieces, and I love doing them, but I also like to include maybe some other materials and vinyl. I'm definitely doing more video to go with that, more so than the photography lately. But I even lately have been thinking about revisiting some of these mail order catalog layouts as an older Ranella Rose Champagne. So that's all I wanted to say on that.